Adrian stood by the tall glass window of his mansion, looking out at the endless skyline. Towers of steel and light stretched as far as the eye could see, glowing under the evening sky. Flying cars traced bright paths above the city, while drones carried supplies across the airways. It was the future that many dreamed of, and Adrian had helped shape it. He was one of the richest men alive, the head of a company that controlled advanced machines and artificial intelligence. Yet inside the great mansion, there was silence. Behind Adrian, long marble halls stretched across the house. The floors gleamed, polished by service robots that worked without pause. Every corner of the mansion had machines ready to serve, but the air still felt empty. In a quiet room upstairs sat a boy named Noah. He was only 7 years old, yet his world was very different from the shining city outside. Noah rarely spoke. He preferred to spend hours arranging shapes and blocks into patterns only he seemed to understand. His eyes often avoided others, and he disliked sudden sounds. Most people did not know how to be with him. Adrian loved his son, but he did not know how to reach him. The billionaire had built worlds of machines, yet could not build a bridge to his own child. Many caretakers had come and gone, unable to connect with Noah. Adrian relied on the latest technology to assist, but even the most advanced machines could not comfort the boy. That morning, a new maid arrived. Her name was Mara. She was a woman of calm presence, with warm brown skin and thoughtful eyes that watched quietly. Unlike the polished machines, she moved with care, not rushing. She did not wear the shining uniforms of the service robots. Instead, she wore a simple blue dress, her hair tied neatly back. She bowed politely to Adrian when she entered the mansion for the first time. "You may begin your duties today," Adrian told her in a voice that carried no emotion. "The staff will guide you. My son requires patience." Mara only nodded. She had no grand words, but something in her steady gaze made Adrian pause for a moment before he turned away. Later that day, Mara was led to the quiet room where Noah sat on the floor. The boy was busy building towers from small wooden blocks. He stacked them in lines, then took them down and built again. A robot assistant stood in the corner, waiting silently for commands, but Noah ignored it. Mara did not speak at once. She walked softly into the room and sat down on the carpet a short distance away. She did not try to touch the blocks or ask Noah what he was doing. Instead, she simply sat, folding her hands in her lap, her eyes calm. At first, Noah did not look at her. He continued to build his towers, his small hands moving quickly and carefully. But as minutes passed, his eyes flicked toward her, then back to his blocks. She was still there. Quiet. Patient. Unmoving. Noah placed another block, then paused. He looked at Mara again. She smiled, a gentle smile, not demanding anything from him. Slowly, Noah slid one of his towers closer to her. Mara did not rush. She leaned forward slightly and placed a block beside his, copying his pattern. Her movements were careful, almost mirroring his. Noah watched closely. For a long time, neither spoke, but in that silence, something passed between them. From the mansion's control room, Adrian watched the screen. Cameras showed him the scene, the woman sitting quietly, the boy allowing her to join his play. Adrian frowned, puzzled. Why had the boy not resisted? Why had he not withdrawn, as he usually did with others? The billionaire had seen many caretakers fail. They always tried to speak too much, to guide too quickly, or to use technology to entertain Noah. But this woman, she had done nothing, and somehow that had worked. Adrian leaned back in his chair, feeling something he had not felt in a long time, a flicker of curiosity. The hours passed, and Noah continued building. Sometimes Mara added a block, sometimes she only watched. But the boy did not push her away. At one point, he even hummed softly, a quiet sound that filled the empty room. When Mara finally rose to leave, Noah looked at her once, then returned to his blocks. It was not much, but for Adrian, it was a change. His son had allowed someone close. That night, as Adrian stood again by the tall window, the city lights glittered like a sea of stars. He thought of the moment he had seen his boy letting someone sit beside him, his boy humming a tune that no machine could have made him sing. For the first time in years, Adrian's heart stirred, though he did not yet understand why. The next morning began like any other inside Adrian's mansion. The sun rose over the futuristic city, casting a golden glow on the tall towers outside. Inside, service robots moved silently through the halls, cleaning surfaces, adjusting curtains, and preparing breakfast. The air smelled faintly of metal and polished glass, the scent of a house run by machines. But in one quiet room, something different was happening. Noah sat cross-legged on the floor, his wooden blocks scattered around him. He was focused, arranging them in straight lines, then carefully stacking them into shapes that only he seemed to understand. His eyes were fixed, his small hands steady. The world outside could not distract him when he was lost in his patterns. Mara entered the room softly. She wore the same simple blue dress, her hair tied neatly as before. She carried no machines, no glowing screens, nothing to distract or overwhelm the boy. Instead, she carried only patience. She lowered herself gently onto the carpet, at a small distance from Noah, and folded her hands in her lap. Noah's eyes flicked toward her for a second. He did not speak. He returned to his blocks. Mara smiled quietly. She picked up a stray block that had rolled close to her and placed it near him, not touching his design. She waited. Minutes passed in silence. Then, to her surprise, Noah reached for the block she had set down. He added it to his tower without hesitation. From the doorway, Adrian stood and watched. He had come to see for himself what he had glimpsed on the camera the day before. His sharp eyes studied every detail, the boy who usually kept others away, now allowing this woman into his small world. Adrian folded his arms, his expression unreadable, but inside, questions began to stir. Why her? Why now? Mara did not seem to notice Adrian at first. She leaned forward, picked up another block, and copied Noah's pattern again. This time Noah paused. His head tilted slightly, as though testing her. Then, slowly, he gave a small nod and continued. The silence in the room was gentle, not heavy. The kind of silence that made space instead of building walls. Adrian found himself holding his breath as he watched his son accept her presence without fear. Later, while Noah stacked a fresh row of blocks, Mara softly spoke. Her voice was calm, almost like a whisper. You build very strong towers, she said. Noah did not reply. His eyes stayed on the blocks. But his shoulders relaxed. Mara said nothing more. She knew when to let silence do the work. Adrian finally stepped forward. Does he always allow you this close? His voice was low, uncertain, almost breaking the silence he was afraid to disturb. Mara looked up at him calmly. Children see things we do not, sir. He feels safe when he is not rushed. Adrian frowned slightly. Safe. His mansion was the most secure place in the city. No harm could touch his son here. Yet he realized she spoke not of walls or machines, but of something else, something he could not buy. Noah suddenly hummed softly, the same quiet tune Adrian had heard before. It was not a song anyone had taught him. It was simply a sound that came from within, a way of showing comfort. Mara tilted her head and hummed along, matching his tone. Noah looked at her this time. For a brief moment, his eyes met hers. Adrian froze. He had lived 7 years with this boy and rarely had his son looked into his eyes. But in that simple exchange, Mara had done what he could not. When the boy returned to his play, Adrian cleared his throat. Machines, machines are faster. They are trained to read his signals, to adjust environments, to keep him calm. Mara nodded gently. Yes, they can do many things. But sometimes, what a child needs is not speed. Sometimes, he only needs someone who will sit and wait. Her words were simple, but they cut into Adrian's mind like sharp glass. He turned and walked out of the room, though the image of his son looking at Mara stayed with him. All through the day, the memory lingered. In his office, surrounded by holograms of new projects and contracts, Adrian's focus broke again and again. His mind returned to that quiet room, to the boy and the maid. That evening, when he checked the camera once more, Noah was sitting beside Mara, almost leaning toward her. She was telling him a story not from a device, but from memory. Her voice was calm, her words simple, about rivers and skies and trees she had seen in her youth. Noah did not speak, but his small fingers rested on the hem of her dress as he listened. Adrian felt something he had long forgotten. A warmth that was not from wealth or success. A stirring deep inside his chest. He did not have a name for it yet, but it unsettled him in a way no business rival ever had. For the first time in years, Adrian wondered if all his machines, all his power, had blinded him to something far greater. And in that quiet house, with the city lights glowing outside, a bond had begun, a bond between a silent boy and the maid who had chosen patience over progress. The days began to take on a quiet rhythm inside the mansion. Each morning, Noah built his towers while Mara sat close by, never pushing, never rushing. Sometimes she copied his designs, sometimes she simply watched. And slowly, almost without notice, Noah began to hum more often, to glance at her, even to rest his small hand near hers. Adrian observed these changes carefully. He did not like to admit it, but Mara had done something no technology or caretaker had ever achieved. His son was not only calmer, he was reaching out, in his own quiet way. One afternoon, Adrian called Mara into his study. The study was a large room, filled with screens, glowing charts, and shelves of books that were more for display than use. The window stretched across the entire wall, showing the city bathed in sunlight. Adrian sat behind his desk, hands folded, eyes sharp. "You have been here only a short time," he began. "Yet Noah responds to you. More than to anyone else." Mara stood with her hands folded politely in front of her. "He only needed someone to wait, sir. He is not difficult, only misunderstood." Adrian leaned back in his chair, studying her. "Where did you learn this patience? It is not common." For a moment, Mara hesitated. Her eyes dropped to the floor. Then she lifted them again, steady and calm. "I grew up in a colony far from the city. It was a small place, forgotten by most. Machines were sent to do the work, but people like us, we were often left behind. If we needed care, we found it in each other, not in devices. I learned early that people need listening more than answers." Adrian tilted his head. A colony far from the city, he remembered hearing about such places. Settlements where technology was slow to arrive, where the poor struggled while the rich built towers higher and higher. He had never stepped foot in such a place himself. "And you chose this work?" Adrian asked. "I chose to help where I could," Mara replied softly. "It may not be grand, but it matters." Her voice carried no pride, only truth. Adrian looked at her for a long moment. For years he had trusted machines more than humans. They were efficient, tireless, and predictable. Yet here was proof in front of him that no machine could have done what Mara had done with his son. That evening, Adrian attended a meeting with his corporate partners. They gathered in a tall glass tower in the center of the city. The room was filled with men and women dressed in sleek suits, their eyes on glowing projections of profits and designs. One of them, a man named Varan, spoke with certainty. "We must move forward with replacing caretakers. Machines do not tire, they do not ask for pay, they do not make mistakes. Imagine the savings. Imagine the control. The others nodded in agreement. Parents will pay more for guaranteed results. No crying, no complaints, no human error. Adrian remained silent, but Mara's words echoed in his mind, people need listening more than answers. As the meeting ended, Varan approached Adrian. Your own mansion uses the latest service models, does it not? Even for your son. Adrian's jaw tightened. He gave a small nod but said nothing more. For the first time, he felt uneasy about the path his company was taking. Back at the mansion, Mara was sitting with Noah again. This time she was telling him about her childhood in the colony. She described the wide open fields, the small houses built from stone, the rivers that sparkled under the sun. Noah did not look at her directly, but his hands moved slower as he listened, his ears catching every word. When Adrian entered the room, Mara paused, unsure if she should continue. But Noah's hand tapped the floor gently, as if asking for more. Adrian raised his hand. Go on, he said quietly. Mara smiled and continued her story. She spoke of nights filled with stars, of the sound of the wind moving through tall grass, of children running barefoot through the dust. Her voice painted pictures that no machine could project on a screen. Adrian stood by the door, listening. He realized then that Noah was not only calmer, but curious, something Adrian had feared his son might never be. Later that night, as he sat alone in his study, Adrian thought about the meeting with his partners. They saw humans as weak, replaceable. But in the quiet of his home, he had seen the opposite. A single woman, with no wealth and no machines, had achieved what their advanced technology could not. He closed his eyes, and for the first time in years, doubt entered his heart. Noah was changing. Mara was part of that change. And Adrian himself, he was not sure yet, but he could feel something shifting inside him, something that wealth and machines had never given him. The mansion was quiet when Adrian returned from another long meeting. The city outside buzzed with light and movement, but inside his home there was calm. He walked through the halls, his footsteps echoing on the marble floor, until he stopped by Noah's room. Through the half-open door, he saw Mara sitting with his son. Noah was lying on the carpet, arranging blocks into circles now instead of towers. Mara sat close by, humming softly. Noah's lips moved, almost matching her tune. Adrian's chest tightened. Each day, the bond between the two grew stronger. His son was opening in ways he had never thought possible. But at the same time, the pressure from his company and partners was growing heavier. They wanted results, expansion, and efficiency. The next morning, a delegation arrived at Adrian's office tower. Not humans, but aliens. Their tall frames and smooth, silver-gray skin reflected the light. Their eyes glowed faintly blue, and they moved with the calm precision of beings far older than humans. They came with an offer. One of them, a figure named Sarek, spoke in a deep, measured voice. Your son struggles. We can help. Our neural device can reshape his mind, guide his pathways, and make him like the others. He will speak as they speak. He will think as they think. The room was silent as their words sank in. Adrian's breath caught in his throat. For years, he had wished for Noah to connect with the world, to be free from his quiet distance. The thought of a solution so final, so quick was tempting. Sarek continued, this device is flawless. We have tested it. It will correct what is broken. Adrian's jaw tightened. Broken. The word echoed in his mind. Later that evening, back at the mansion, he sat across from Mara in the quiet dining room. Noah was asleep in his room, resting peacefully after another day spent building patterns with her. Adrian spoke at last. The aliens have offered something. A device. They say it can fix Noah's mind. Mara's expression shifted slightly, but her eyes stayed steady. "Fix?" she asked softly. "Yes," Adrian said. "They claim it will make him like other children. He will speak, respond, live without struggle. He could fit in." For a long moment, Mara was silent. Then she shook her head. "Sir, your son is not broken. He does not need fixing. He needs understanding." Adrian frowned. "You do not understand. Do you know how difficult it is for him? For me? For the world that waits for him? This device could change everything." Mara's voice was gentle, but firm. "Change, yes. But at what cost? His silence, his patterns, his way of seeing the world, these are part of who he is. If you erase them, you erase him." Her words struck him harder than he expected. He turned away, staring at the tall windows where the city lights glittered. "You speak as though struggle is a gift." "I speak as though life is more than convenience," Mara replied. "Machines are convenient. People are not. But it is our difference, our imperfection, that makes us human." Adrian said nothing. Inside, a storm was rising. On one side was the promise of technology, fast, efficient, certain. On the other was this woman's belief in patience, in acceptance, in humanity itself. The next day, the aliens returned to press their offer. They showed him holograms of children smiling, speaking, laughing after their treatment. They spoke of a future where no child was left behind, where every mind was reshaped to match the world. Adrian felt the weight of the decision pressing down on him. His partners urged him to accept. "Think of what this would mean," Varan insisted. "If even your own son is cured, the world will follow. Our company will control the future of human development." But when Adrian returned home that night, he saw Noah sitting with Mara again. The boy was lining up his blocks into a spiral, his small hands moving with care. Mara was beside him, not correcting, not pushing, only watching with warmth in her eyes. Noah glanced at her and tapped twice on the floor, as if asking her to join. She placed a block carefully in his spiral, and Noah allowed it. Then he hummed softly. Adrian stood at the door, frozen. His son was not smiling like the children in the alien holograms, but he was calm, connected, present. It was not perfect. But it was real. That night, Adrian lay awake in his room, torn between two paths. The logical voice in his mind whispered that the alien device was the answer, the fastest road to progress. But another voice, quieter yet deeper, told him what Mara had said: if you erase them, you erase him. Adrian did not yet know what choice he would make. But he knew the decision would not only shape his son's future, it would shape his own. The sky turned dark with heavy clouds, and the city below trembled under a rare storm. Lightning flashed across the horizon, and the sound of thunder rolled through the tall towers. In the mansion, lights flickered. Machines beeped nervously as the power supply shifted to backup. Adrian stood in the control room, staring at the monitors. The storm was fierce, stronger than the city had faced in years. His mansion was built to withstand anything, but even so, he felt uneasy. Then, with one sharp strike of lightning, the main systems failed. The screens went black. The service robots froze in place. The hum of machines that always filled the halls fell silent. For the first time, the great mansion was without its constant pulse of technology. Adrian clenched his fists. Backup should engage, he muttered. But nothing returned. Then he heard the sound of crying. He rushed down the hall to Noah's room. The boy was curled on the floor, hands pressed tightly over his ears, his body shaking as thunder roared outside. His blocks were scattered everywhere. Without the soft hum of machines, the house felt strange and empty, and the storm's noise filled the silence. "Noah," Adrian said, kneeling beside him. He reached out, unsure of what to do. His voice shook with panic. "It's all right. You're safe. The systems will return soon." But Noah only rocked back and forth, his breathing fast and uneven. Adrian felt helpless. All his wealth, all his machines, and he could not calm his own son. "Mara!" Adrian called, his voice echoing through the hall. She arrived quickly, her steps firm though the house was dark. She saw Noah on the floor, trembling, and without hesitation she knelt beside him. Her movements were calm, her presence steady. She spoke softly, her voice gentle even as thunder cracked above. "Noah, breathe with me. In, and out." She placed her hand lightly on her chest, showing him how to inhale deeply and exhale slowly. Noah kept rocking, but after a moment, his eyes flicked toward her. "In, and out," Mara repeated, her tone soft but sure. She breathed slowly, exaggerating each rise and fall of her chest. Adrian knelt frozen, watching. He wanted to speak, but his words stuck in his throat. Noah's breaths were uneven at first, but little by little, he tried to copy her. His shoulders shook, but they began to rise and fall with her rhythm. "That's it," Mara whispered. "You are safe. The storm is loud, but it will pass. In, and out." She began to hum gently, the same tune she often used when sitting with him. The sound filled the dark room with warmth. Noah's rocking slowed. His breathing matched hers. Adrian felt something shift inside him. He had never seen such calm drawn from chaos, not by machines, not by doctors, not even by himself. Minutes passed. The storm raged on, but Noah lay still now, his head leaning gently against Mara's arm. His small hands dropped from his ears. He was quiet again. Adrian finally found his voice. How did you do that?" Mara looked up at him. In the dim light, her eyes reflected calm strength. "I did nothing, sir. I was simply here." He needed to know someone was with him, not against him. Her words struck Adrian deeply. He had always believed problems could be solved by systems, devices, or solutions bought with money. Yet in this moment, none of those things mattered. Only patience, only presence, only human warmth. When the mansion's power finally returned, the lights blinked back on and the robots resumed their duties. But Adrian hardly noticed. His eyes were fixed on his son, still resting quietly against Mara. Later that night, when Noah was asleep, Adrian walked out onto the balcony. The storm had passed, leaving the air cool and fresh. The city below glistened with rain. For the first time in many years, Adrian felt small, not in weakness, but in humility. Mara joined him quietly. She did not speak until he turned toward her. "I have spent years building a world where machines are trusted above all," Adrian said slowly. "But tonight, in the silence, I saw the truth. When my son needed me most, I was powerless. And you gave him peace with nothing but your voice." Mara lowered her eyes. "It was not me, sir. It was Noah. He trusted. That is something no device can force." Adrian was silent for a long time. Then, for the first time in years, his voice softened. "You have taught me more in these weeks than all my years of business ever did." Mara said nothing more. The wind moved softly between them, carrying the scent of rain. Inside, Noah slept soundly, his blocks neatly arranged beside him once again. And in that moment, Adrian knew the storm had not only passed over the city. It had passed within him as well. The storm had left the city washed clean. Roads glistened with rain, and the towers sparkled under the morning sun. Inside the mansion, the robots had resumed their duties, polishing floors and serving breakfast. Yet Adrian's mind was not on business or machines. His thoughts returned again and again to the moment when Noah had leaned against Mara during the storm. That image refused to leave him. Later that day, Adrian sat in his office tower with his corporate partners. The wide glass windows stretched high above the city, and holograms filled the room with charts and projections. Varun, his closest partner, stood in front of the group. "The alien device is the future," Varun said firmly. "It will solve every problem. Parents will pay anything for the promise of normal children. And we will be the ones to provide it. Adrian, your son should be the first. Imagine the message that will send." The others nodded in agreement. Their voices overlapped, each one talking about profit, control, and power. Adrian sat silently, his hands folded. His mind was not on their words, but on Noah's soft humming in Mara's presence, on the peace he had seen during the storm. At last, he raised his hand. The room fell quiet. "No," Adrian said firmly. "I will not use the alien device on my son. And I will not allow this company to move forward with it." Varun blinked in shock. "What are you saying? This is the greatest step forward in human history." Adrian's eyes were sharp. "Forward? Or away from what makes us human? My son is not broken. None of us are. To erase his way of seeing the world would be to erase him. I will not stand by and allow it." Murmurs spread across the room. Some looked angry, others confused. Varun stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Adrian, think carefully. You are letting emotions control you. This is not about one child, this is about all of humanity. Machines are the answer. Efficiency is the answer." Adrian shook his head slowly. "No, Varun. Machines may serve us, but they cannot replace us. What I saw in my home cannot be built by technology. It was trust. It was love. No machine can create that." The silence in the room was heavy. Finally, Adrian stood. "I will invest in people, not devices. Programs that train, support, and protect human connection. That is the future I will build." His words fell like stone in water. His partners' faces hardened, but Adrian did not waver. He turned and walked out, leaving their protests behind. Back at the mansion, he found Mara and Noah sitting in the garden. The rain had left droplets shining on the leaves, and the air smelled of fresh earth. Noah was quietly touching the wet petals of a flower, fascinated by the way the drops slid off. Mara sat beside him, watching with the same calm patience she always carried. When Noah saw Adrian, he did not turn away as usual. Instead, he pointed at the flower and looked at his father. It was a small gesture, but to Adrian, it was as if a door had opened. Adrian knelt beside his son. "It's beautiful," he said softly. Noah blinked at him, then looked back at the flower. His small hand rested briefly on Adrian's sleeve before he returned to his quiet play. Adrian's chest tightened with emotion. It was not perfect, it was not the miracle the aliens had promised, but it was real. It was his son reaching out in his own way. That evening, Adrian sat with Mara in the quiet of the study. "I ended the company's deal," he told her. "We will not use the alien device. We will not replace people with machines." Mara looked at him, surprise flickering in her eyes. That was not an easy choice. Adrian gave a small smile, one that felt strange on his face after so many years. "It was the only choice. I have spent my life believing progress was measured in machines and wealth. But I was wrong. Real progress is found in connection. In patience. In humanity." Mara lowered her gaze, her voice soft. "Your son is lucky to have a father willing to see that." Adrian's smile faded into thoughtfulness. "No, I am the lucky one. Because of him, and because of you." The room was quiet after that. Outside, the city continued to glow with lights and noise, but inside the mansion there was something greater: warmth, stillness, and the beginning of change. In the days that followed, Adrian began to spend more time with Noah. At first, he only watched as Mara guided him. Then, slowly, he joined in. He placed blocks beside his son, copied his patterns, even hummed softly to match his tune. It was awkward at first. Adrian was not used to slowing down, not used to silence. But Noah began to accept him, little by little. One day, when Adrian added a block to his son's tower, Noah looked up at him with a brief but steady gaze. Adrian's heart swelled at the simple gift of that look. Machines could never have given him that moment. The first light of morning painted the sky with soft pinks and golds. The city below was slowly waking, towers catching the sun's reflection, roads filling with quiet movement. Inside the mansion, a calm energy filled the rooms, a different kind of power, one not created by machines or money, but by patience, understanding, and care. Adrian stood by the balcony, watching Noah play in the garden. His son had scattered blocks across the wet grass, building shapes and patterns in the soft earth. Mara sat close by, smiling as Noah carefully placed one block after another, humming a tune only they seemed to understand. Adrian had never thought he could feel such peace inside his home. The mansion was still grand, still filled with the latest technology, but he no longer saw it as the center of his life. His focus had shifted. His son's small hands, his quiet voice, and the warmth Mara had brought into their lives had shown him a power no wealth or machine could ever provide. He stepped into the garden, careful not to startle Noah. "Good morning," he said softly. Noah looked up briefly, then returned to his play. Adrian knelt beside him, careful to match his son's pace. "I see your tower is very tall today." Noah smiled slightly, a rare and precious moment. "Almost done," he whispered. Adrian's chest tightened. That simple word, spoken by his son for the first time in weeks, felt like a bridge being built. It was fragile and small, but it was real. Mara watched from a short distance, her eyes calm and knowing. She did not interfere, because this moment was for them, father and son. Adrian reached forward, placing a small block next to Noah's, matching the boy's design. Noah's hand brushed his father's for a second. The contact was brief, yet it felt monumental. Adrian realized then that he had spent years building walls between himself and the world, and now those walls were slowly falling. "Do you want me to help?" Adrian asked gently. Noah hesitated for a moment. Then, with a small nod, he allowed Adrian to place another block. Step by step, the boy was letting his father in. The city beyond the garden seemed less important than this quiet connection. No contracts, no machines, no business decisions could give him what he felt now, the chance to be a father to his son. Later that day, Adrian finally spoke to Mara directly, his voice sincere. "I want to thank you," he said. "Not just for helping Noah, but for helping me understand him, and myself." Mara lowered her eyes and smiled softly. "You are welcome, sir. You have done the work too, though you may not realize it. You chose to stay, to listen, to care." Adrian nodded. "I did. And I will continue. From now on, my work will not only be about machines and progress. It will also be about people. About humanity. You've shown me that, and I will never forget it." Mara looked at him, warmth in her expression. "Your son will teach you many more lessons. He is patient, kind, and unique. And you are learning to be patient too." Noah, who had been quietly stacking his blocks nearby, suddenly spoke again. "Tower, tall." Adrian froze. The words were simple, but the meaning was huge. He smiled widely. "Yes, it is very tall. You made it strong." Noah's eyes shone for a moment, meeting his father's gaze. It was not a perfect sentence, but it was enough, a bridge that had never existed before. The three of them sat together on the soft grass. Adrian placed blocks beside his son, copying his designs, and Noah allowed it. Mara hummed softly, encouraging the quiet harmony. No machines were necessary, no devices, no grand inventions. Just presence, patience, and connection. For Adrian, the world outside had not changed, but everything inside his home had. The lessons Mara had brought, and the trust Noah had begun to show, had transformed his life. He had learned that true power was not in wealth or technology, but in the ability to understand, to care, and to be present for those who needed it most. By evening, the city's lights twinkled like stars. Adrian, Noah, and Mara stood together in the garden, watching the sunset. Noah rested his small hand on Adrian's arm, a simple gesture of trust. Adrian's heart swelled with something he had long forgotten: hope. He turned to Mara and spoke softly, a quiet truth he had never voiced before. "You've changed my life, and my heart. Thank you for being here." Mara smiled gently, shaking her head. "No thanks is needed. The heart knows its own way." Adrian looked at his son, then at the sky glowing above the city. For the first time, he felt complete. The mansion, the machines, the wealth, they had been only shadows of what truly mattered. His son, this woman who had shown him humanity, and the bond they shared were the dawn of a new life. As the sun set, casting warm colors over the city, Adrian held Noah's hand firmly. Together, with Mara nearby, they faced the future. Not perfect, not controlled, but real and full of possibility. It was a new dawn indeed, a life built not on machines, not on money, but on trust, empathy, and the quiet, unstoppable power of the human heart.